Hey, this is Phil Yanov with the Tech After 5 podcast. And I don't know if you're having this problem, but I spend a lot of time in Zoom meetings. Now, the thing for me is I see that mostly it's just that my chair is really uncomfortable, and I have not done anything about that yet. I've got most of the other stuff worked out, but the chair thing is just bothering the heck out of me. But I think there might be some ways to make Zoom meetings. We thought maybe we could make them fun, but at least, I don't know if we can make them fun, but certainly we should be able to make them less miserable. And that is what we were here to talk about today. Are there ways for you, particularly if you're trying to lead a group or you've got to pull a group together, you've got to get them somehow encouraged to hang out on your Zoom meetings or whatever that might be. It doesn't matter, Teams, Meet, whatever. But you got to get them to hang out with you, and this can be kind of a problem. So we've brought in an expert as well as our lovely panel of our lovely panel of co-host inquisitors to make sure that we get to the bottom of this thing right here. So first off, let me introduce my good friend, Scott Pfeiffer. Scott, good to see you, pal.
Good to see you too, Phil. Always glad to be here.
Yeah. We're glad to see you. I'm just pointing out right away, again, Scott he's got two, not one, but two logos now. And I think that what Scott is trying to tell you, do you see that he's got a logo on one panel? This is, of course, for you, the YouTube audience. He's got two logos there, but he has nothing on the other side. So that space is for rent, friends. If you can send him a poster, a patch, a pin, something like that, that and a sawbuck, and you can probably get it on an episode, right? So, just enough to cover a good bottle of gin. And when we say good bottle, we mean Plymouth Navy strength is what we want Scott to be drinking. That's the good stuff.
Do we hear sponsor?
This is it. You guys are going to force me to somehow have to include those disclaimers in the YouTube channel when we do that. So far we've managed to avoid that. All right.
Monetize this podcast.
Somehow we got to make cash out of that. And, of course, I have my good friend Carol Hamilton here in her, again, I feel sorry for you who can't see it because she has got purple glory going on. She is selling the purple as we look out over the Thames.
That's
Carol,
right.
Carol,
yeah.
good to see you.
Clearly, Sherwin-Williams is my sponsor because it keeps changing color. But yeah, it is delightful to be here. And I love the whole concept that we're going to figure out ways of making Zoom perhaps less miserable and maybe even more impactful. Wouldn't that be a nice change? Glad to be here. Oh my
gosh, to get more good out of it. I hadn't thought about that part. Yeah, no, mind blown. We'll get Jesse to stick that in there too, the mind blowing thing. And of course, we brought my good friend, a guy I've known a long time, and he is a leadership coach, and his name is Manfred Gollent. Manfred, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Phil, and thanks for you guys hanging here with me.
Yes. Well, that's what we're doing, and of course we're all working from home or living at work, depending on how you like to look at this, in a whole variety of places. Manfred, I want to start with you, just kind of ask that question on the front end. We start with the idea that, hey, good news. Everybody has learned how to use Zoom, Team, Meet, whatever, pick yours, Poison or whatever. But this is also kind of problematic. We've noticed all sorts of troubles in them, and engagement can be difficult. And I think that you're going to tell me that this is particularly difficult if someone's trying to lead a team. Have I got that right?
Well, no question. And I think what we need to consider is the distributed workforce or remote workforce, no matter what term you want to use, is here to stay. No matter if it's a full remote workforce, like companies like WordPress use globally since quite some time, even before COVID-19, or if it is a kind of a part-time distributed remote activity. It will be here to stay, and it requires a little bit different approaches to manage and lead.
Yeah, I think we agree. There is something to that, right? We got to figure out how to engage our audience, right, and have better meetings. And it seems like you've got some ideas around that. We kind of listed out a few of these, and maybe you could talk to us about that. One of the things you said right off, and I'll start with the first one, and I'm going to maybe get Carol in on the second point. But the first one was, you said meeting length matters, primarily setting shorter meetings. Talk about that.
Look, first of all, and that is not only for digital meetings, we tend to hold too long meetings and have too many people in them. Not everybody has to be in there, but it's kind of tradition. So on a digital basis, we need to even shorten that even more, not only to make it more efficient, but to make it work in the first place. If you think about yourself, how can you sit 3 hours or 2 hours in front of a screen and look at 20 people? I mean, you will be very tired after 10, 15 minutes, and you start drifting off, and that's when we are not engaged anymore. And engagement in a meeting is everything.
Right.
Well, and Manfred, I'd like to ask you a question too, because what I'm seeing a lot is people aren't even turning on cameras. Now, this is old school behavior. Back before COVID, it was accepted that you could just treat this as a conference call. But what I'm finding is that people are now not only having 20 or 30 people on the call, which means there's too many to really interact well, but also they're not even getting this visual that we're needing. They're just sitting there with slides up and then talking to a slide for 10 coma-inducing moments or something. Are you seeing some of that too?
Most certainly, yes. Of course, look, in my meetings with clients, it's always camera on. But if you think about a meeting one-on-one where you have just two people and one has the camera on, the other one doesn't, you feel like being naked.
Yeah.
It's an emotional perception that is, it's a little bit different when there are 15 people on a meeting and three are not visible on camera, and you have just a still picture. But in general, I think it is common courtesy to turn your camera on. Challenge is, of course, a little bit technology, because if your internet connection isn't reasonably good, then if you have video on, it takes more bandwidth, and you get more still pictures, even it shouldn't be a still picture. So there are some technology challenges along the way, but in general, from an emotional and relationship and interaction perspective, I suggest always to have cameras on.
Well, and building on that, do you have some thoughts around who should be in the room? Because the more, every time you add a person, you add in challenge for connection, human connection, right? Is if I'm understanding you. And so now when we're talking about how many people are you bringing in, it really comes back to how are you even deciding who should be there, right?
Absolutely. And that starts with meeting planning. And I work with my clients generally on making meetings more effective. And I'm not talking necessarily digital meetings, in general. And how do you make them more effective? First of all, you don't have 15 items on the agenda and 25 people, and several of those people have 10 minutes of fame, and the rest of the 3 hours they are sitting there and listening or checking their phones or doing email or whatever. You focus meetings, have rather one subject or two subjects on it, and have the people that are related to that subject, and the rest get minutes. And of course, then we can also talk about how do you design meeting minutes that people are going to read.
So to have an effective meeting, our first step then is to prepare vigorously before the meeting. Is there anything else you would do besides limit the agenda and limit the attendees before you ever start the meeting?
Well, I have a rule on meetings, and I learned that the hard way. But I have a rule on meetings. My recommendation is to have a desired outcome defined as the headline of the meeting. No matter if it's to inform on X, Y, Z, to decide on whatever an issue is, or to come to a conclusion of something. Excuse me. You want to get a clear desired outcome, and that in itself eliminates to have 15 subjects on it. So because you want those that participate already come to the meeting with the desired outcome in mind. How am I going to contribute to make a decision on doing X?
So we're going to, in the title of the meeting, say exactly what the desired outcome is for this meeting. And then that's going to help us limit the agenda and limit the attendees and limit the time, because we're there to talk about this.
That is certainly the idea. And let's face it, if you don't know what the desired outcome should be, why hold a meeting in the first place?
Yeah,
well,
no, I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I love being functional. So let me give you that stroke on this on the front end first, right? I love the idea of saying, how can we handle this from a functional perspective? Let's make sure that we're getting things done in meetings. I'm also curious about, in this moment where we're not seeing each other face to face enough, how do we solve that problem of not having the just more casual interactions, the social bonding, the building rapport? I'm worried about that a little bit. And I'm not trying to be woo. I just think we collaborate better when we have a positive regard for the people that we work with. And that is harder to do when I'm not seeing them as often. And I'm wondering if you got some thoughts on that, Manfred.
Well, first of all, I encourage having also meetings for the whole team, half an hour or whatever you decide. We're just shooting the breeze without a purpose. Just what's going on? How are you guys doing? Anything fun? Anything bothering you? Just shooting the breeze and kind of having a beer.
Yeah.
That maybe after hours or at the end of the day.
Right. So do you mean, so is in your mind, then we just separate those two functions? Basically, when I think about, like, there are lots of meetings where I think, the first 5 minutes are what we would call bonding and rapport, right? So I'm doing that before I get to the functional aspect. You're saying that it might be okay to just take that and move that to something else, move that into a separate meeting and say, you know what, Fridays is happy hour. And that's when we're going to all sit down with a beer and have a drink, and 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock. But we're going to, whatever that is, right? We're going to figure that out. But anyway, that bonding rapport, we don't want to say no to that, but we're saying that we don't want the normal meeting where we're trying to get work done to get overrun by something that we're not taking care of elsewhere.
Yes, and of course, there is always at the beginning a little, so how are you guys doing? Anything. But keep that to 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Just don't have 15 minutes on that. But really, the other thing, in addition to that, is I encourage people having more one-on-one contacts also via camera, because that helps as well. And I encourage leaders, my clients, to not only have the meetings with whoever is necessary for the meeting, but touch base with individuals and don't talk necessarily about that project or that issue, but find out, so how are you doing? Did your wife find her a job again, or is she still off? Or finding out what people do, how they're doing, because you don't have that anymore. When you are in the office, you walk by and say, oh, by the way, how are the kids? Or how's your son's football game going? you don't have those opportunities. So you need.
Well, I really like that advice. I have to tell you, I think that's worth repeating, because I have so many people who are sitting there in groups of 20 plus saying, I now need to have a conversation about Scott and how the kid's doing, or Phil and how's the family. And that is so difficult to do because you have various people in various time zones who just don't have the patience. I love the idea that you might stay with business during the meeting, but then get on calendars to have that 15 minutes of, Manfred, I just want to go human to human with you. How are things going? I know this is a rough time. I know you're still in quarantine or whatever it is that's happening, and be able to really connect, but really connect, not just pretend you're trying to connect in a meeting. That's great advice. Thank you for that.
Look, we have this situation that we have to work from home, and we think, well, this is cool for people. They are now allowed to work from home. They can be in their slippers and just have a shirt on, and everything is fine. How comfortable is that? Well, maybe not. Maybe there are now several people that have to work from home, and we don't really have the spaces for everybody, and we don't have. And we have to stress that that my spouse is laid off or on furlough, and we don't really know how things are going. Yes, I still have a job, but I have other kids home for home learning, and there are all kinds of issues. So it's not all hunky-dory and cool and comfortable.
But the real point here is that you're gonna decide what kind of meeting this is up front and communicate that, right? Is this a social meeting? Is this a stand-up? We're all gonna check in on our work and maybe there's a couple of minutes of social, or is this a decision-making meeting where you've said, here's the decision we're gonna make today?
You are a fast learner, Scott. Absolutely, no kidding. Absolutely, I think. The more we are clear about the purpose of the meeting, the outcome that we want to get, the likelier is that everybody that is participating comes already prepared for the outcome, not just to go through their activity, through their 3 slides that I told them, you need to have 3 slides on this, or.
So when it's a decision-making meeting, how do you balance limiting the attendance with making sure all the stakeholders are in the room so that the decision has stickiness?
Well, you need to find out who is a contributor to it, who is actively in it and contributing. That doesn't mean others could contribute, but they will contribute when they get the minutes. And when we talk about minutes, just a second, I don't like pages of minutes that who was talking first and second and third and about this and that. I like 5 bullet points, because those 5 bullet points will have an effect and they will be read. If it's a 2-page beautiful story, nobody is going to go beyond the first paragraph.
Yes, the cliff notes, if you will. Yeah.
So now we've done our preparation. We've communicated the purpose of the meeting. We've got the right people in. We have a limited agenda. How do you take control of the meeting and present dynamically so that you don't lose them in the first 5 minutes? What's your advice on that?
Well, I think, and that's where really changes come into play. You really have to think, if you're the one that calls the meeting, you lead the meeting. That's the assumption that I'm making. So you have to think through what should be the flow, how should we get to X from A, and lay out the flow, layout. I'm using Mural for that too when I'm preparing for meetings. I have my little blocks and I move them around until I have the right lineup. Then you think about time, what it will potentially take, and that little preparation may take 15 minutes, but that will help you to have a more streamlined and clear meeting, and then you keep going and make also changes that you have people in the plenum where you have everybody in, and then maybe have some specific questions which some sub-teams can work on in a breakout room, and with Mural you can work that out so that every breakout room has also a board. I mean, there's many ways, but to keep things changing, and my attitude to that is maximum 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you need to change scenario. You need to move them into a breakout room, or if it's a longer subject, you need to make breaks. And what I have done lately is I'm using Loom for that. I don't like to use PowerPoints in the meeting. I do as little as possible. So what I do is, I have my PowerPoint and I use Loom.
Loom, is that Loom?
LOOM.co. And you can make your PowerPoint presentation as a little video, and I try to cut them into 5 to 7 minute segments. So then what I do is I say, okay, you have now 20 minutes break to take care of phone calls or whatever. One of the things you need to do during this break is to watch the next video, which you just got the link, which is a 6-minute video, which will lead us into the next part of our conversation.
So I noticed on here, and I'm cheating here because I actually have a little cheat sheet that says adult learning module concepts. And I am dying for you to dig into that, because I think that you're probably already referencing it without us knowing it, but I would like to know more about what that means to you.
First of all, it doesn't mean anything to me because the term was put into that by my dear friend Phil. But
I was going to say, I sure hope that Manfred can answer this, because I was thinking, yeah, Manfred, you're talking about adult learning model, and that is, delivering what you want in short segments. So yes, yeah. Manfred is talking about this already, right?
Yes. Now, first of all, we are talking about this, but I was thinking about how could I give additional interpretation to adult learning, and what I think what we do as coaches, and Carol, you will realize that immediately, and I'm probably Scott too, is we use Socratic methods.
What does that mean?
Funny guy.
You don't know anything, but. Socratic method is to find out, basically, to frame a content, frame a context, and then ask a question that takes you outside of that context, or that would challenge that context, and then you figure out maybe a new enhanced definition of the context.
So we got to stop here and highlight this again, because if you're listening to this and you didn't catch that, I want to make sure you get a second chance. This is about designing a message that isn't just talking at people, it's actually gaining from the audience. And I think that you're onto something that is one of the biggest challenges, which is that leaders come on and they think, here's what I want to do. Here's the brain dump I want to lead. And completely ignore the genius sitting on the other side of the camera saying, I'd like to add into that. I'd like to be a part of this conversation. I could actually move this whole discussion forward if you would have just built into your 20 minutes an opportunity for me to participate, to help weigh in and design and sculpt this decision that we're making. So I love that you're bringing that in, that says this needs to be an interaction as much as possible, not just formal Q&A, but an actual discussion. Love that. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Carol, if you would be now close to me, I would give you a bear hug.
No, you're on. You're on.
It's really, this is how you engage. This is how you bring people into it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I would say is dynamic inquiry. And of course, Phil already smiles. Okay, what do you mean by that? Well, dynamic inquiry, for example, a good dynamic inquiry question is, what do you mean when you say X? We use very fat words, which your interpretation is different than mine. So we make assumptions. And we react, of course, based on our assumption. We need to find out more. I need to find out what you think when you use different terms that are really subjective. Otherwise, we are talking by each other and not with
or
each
at
other.
each other, right?
Or at each other.
Yeah.
Manfred,
Thank you for translating that to English, Carol. Go ahead, Scott.
Manfred, I find that even in face-to-face meetings, there are people that will dominate the meeting and people that will sit back and just not feel like they can contribute. And I think it's even worse when we get into large online meetings. What tricks do you use to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to weigh in and participate?
No, if I know that a person tends to be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, I would with some fun I would say, okay, Scott, you have 90 seconds.
That's good. And
I hope that works, by the way, for you. I'm thinking of all the places I've been. It's like, okay, this is 6 minutes long. We're going to give you 7. And at 8, you're going, holy cow, can you stop with this? Right. So I'm hoping that works for you. But I like that. I think, your point too, it's not just that we have to limit that. I like, because I think Scott's point is super important, right? And the thing is, some people talk more than others. But that doesn't mean that they have more to contribute. It just means that's the mode in which their brain operates, and they just like dumping that out. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a way the world works. But the thing is, if you're going to pull other ideas out, then you have to figure out, am I going to go point to this? So I do this, for example, a lot at our Tech After 5 meetings. I will say, hey, Manfred, you haven't spoken tonight. Talk to us for a second and tell me X, Y, or Z. I want you to weigh in on this. So I use that. Let me tell you one thing that I've done, and I'm kind of curious if you guys are playing with this as well. So there's a particular question that I've got for the Tech After 5 audiences, and I am really afraid of groupthink creeping in on it. So what I've done is I've put it inside a poll first so that everybody has to weigh in on the issue first before anyone sees the answer, right? So if I got 50 people on the call, 50 people have to answer the question. And then I say, now this is what I'm hearing from you guys. Now talk to me about what we see in that number. But I don't want 2 or 3 strong voices to just overwhelm the conversation.
Yeah, using the chat feature is, of course, a great tool to get lots of answers to poll, and then interpret the answers, and then have maybe a little conversation. But you're absolutely right. There are always dominating people. What I do and what I suggest to do is, first of all, when you prepare the meeting, typically a company meeting is not 50 people. It's 5 people, it's maybe 12 people or something like that. So you talk to your dominators before and say, hey, don't overtake the meeting. We need to get everybody involved. We need to get to this result. I will let you know if you are taking too much time. I will do that in preparation of the meeting. There is nothing wrong with being authentic about this. People know that anyhow themselves, that they tend to be a little bit overpowering. And
I'd like to throw a point in the middle, because I think you're on to another really great point. And I think there's another piece to this, especially I do a lot of crossing languages and cultures. And I think the other thing you want to really practice with is the art of interrupting. Because even if you get the highest level of senior leader, it doesn't mean they can't go off on some tangent, some sort of goat hunt that you have no idea where they're going and why. But for you to be able to come in and say, Phil, I think you're onto a brilliant point, and forgive my interrupting, but I do want to note that on your, we put this on your schedule, and I'm concerned that we're going to run past your ability to stay for the decision. So I'm wondering if we could take that topic and put that into another time frame, or would you like this decision to be shifted to that? Now, if you're the highest senior level, this is still your time, you get to decide, but I want to be really good at not letting people just randomly think, because I think sometimes they forget to look at the clock, and you're actually doing them a favor.
Oh my gosh, you are so nice. I would have done that in half the time, because I'm just not that nice to people, right? But I get the idea. Yes,
if I wanted to write a check, I'm going to be really nice. Because the chances are, if I'm having a meeting with senior leaders, I'm coming in with an ask, and I want a yes.
Right. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, that's a good technique, right? Thank you for that. Now, back to this topic. Let's move on, call on somebody else. I like Manfred's points about talking to your overwhelming people beforehand if you know who they are, or telling them, hey, you've got 90 seconds. I like Phil's idea for avoiding groupthink by doing a poll. What tool do you use to do that poll, by the way, Phil? Is that in the chat, or is there some...
Built in Zoom. It's built into Zoom.
Awesome.
And almost every platform has a polling. Almost all of them do.
And I also like, the idea of if somebody's been quiet, you say, hey, we haven't heard from you. What do you have to say? Because, to Phil's point, the person that's quiet may have the most to contribute. They just don't feel comfortable jumping in, or every time they jump in, somebody runs right over them. So I think if you've done a good job of curating the room, and you've got your diverse opinions in there, you've got the decisions makers in there, then it's incumbent on you to make sure you hear from everybody, because you had it for a reason.
Can we just add that same prep thing into the quiet ones? So, Scott, if you're my quiet guy and you're my quiet every meeting, and I know Manfred's doing this too, I'm going to go talk to my talkers and say, you know what? I need to make sure I hear from everybody. And I'm going to go ahead of time and say, Scott, I really need to hear from you in this meeting. So I'm going to be calling on you. Will you please get yourself mentally ready, or whatever it is you need to do to be ready for that? Because what I don't want to do is take a really quiet person and say, hey, we need you to speak in front of some of the most important audience you're going to talk in front of this week, and you've had no time to prep, because that just feels like you've been thrown under the bus. And I know Manfred's really good at doing that too, bringing those people in a way that they can live with.
And look, the interesting thing is what we are talking about here is not only for digital meetings. It's general good meeting practice. But with on a digital basis, it is just twice as important to make it productive. It's twice as.
Well, the neat thing is I've got a mute button on my digital meetings that I didn't actually have on my other ones. So just press a button and poof, he's gone.
I do use that sometimes.
What does it say? Someone said, Phil, it's time to mute and boot. So.
Oh, that's going to catch on.
Mute and boot.
That's going viral. I can feel that one. That's now the trailer. Time to mute and boot.
That's right.
Well, man, we've done our prep work. We've got our topic. We got the right people. You've talked to the talkers. You've talked to the not talkers. You're breaking it up into sections. I love the idea of taking a 20-minute break and giving them something to watch and coming back together if it's a long topic. Now talk to us about the meeting's done. You limited your attendance to the real stakeholder decision makers, but now you want to communicate it out. You referred to that earlier with your minutes comment. Tell us a little bit more about the minutes and how you do that, when do you do it, what your tricks are for making those effective.
Well, I appreciate that. Number one, there is no productive meeting without documentation, because if you can't document what's the purpose and what's the outcome, you didn't really have a meeting. Then it was a social meeting. And in order to disseminate to those that need to be in the know and need to understand what's being done or what's going on, you have to get the essence. And the key in meeting minutes is really to pull the essence out of it. And the key is then to create this, whatever, 3, 5, 8 bullet points. Don't elaborate on unimportant ongoings along the meeting.
So it's not Manfred said this, and then Carol said this, and then Phil said this, and then Scott said this. It's just, here's what we decided.
No. These were the 3 decisions, or the 3 conclusions we got to, or 5 or 4, whatever, or the 1 conclusion, and this is what it is all about.
Decision number 1, Tuesday is your last day. Decision number 2.
You will turn in your computer by 5 o'clock.
So easy.
And can we just bring into the power of humor? I love just this kind of thing where you're sitting here going, just because we're online and we're in what feels like a bit more formal setting doesn't mean we have to stop losing our sense of humor. In fact, I actually think it's important that we get it even more so because, and I'm looking at these notes about changing your visuals every 60 seconds and coming back to eye contact. I'd love for you to talk even more about that because I think those are such important pieces so that we can really keep connecting as humans, because isn't that where the decisions and relationships are built? Manfred?
Absolutely, sure. When you mention eye contact, first of all, again, it's important that everybody has the camera turned on. Otherwise, it's hard to make eye contact.
Yeah.
But it's also important to change the scenery on a regular basis, and I think. Again, that's not only for digital meetings, but one big mistake in our communication activities and how we interact is that our listening skills are generally not the best. We may be all good talkers and good in talking too, but the most powerful part is listening, and listening for understanding rather than listening for response. And that is a discipline and a habit that needs to be built. And without that, it's going to be hard having productive interactions.
Manfred, what do you mean when you say change the scenery?
Yeah, changing, first of all, having different slides. Don't stick on a slide for 5 minutes if you use slides. Make sure that you don't, rather than having a slide full of 20 points, which I have seen too often, have a slide with 1 point or maximum 3. We like to think in threes. Our hardwiring is kind of in terms of 3. That's how we easy process and digest. So one of the suggestions I give to my clients when we talk about communication and using visuals, think in 3. There are 3 things that I'm going to talk about today. 1, 2, and 3. So when we are going to number 1, there are 3 things that are important in doing this.
Yeah, I really like that, Manfred. A lot of times if I'm going to present, I think it's important to give your listeners a roadmap. And so, it's okay to put that roadmap in, and you can say at the beginning, all right, I'm going to cover 3 things today. 1, 2, 3. And then first thing, and then when you get to the end, you can give a transition. All right, we're moving on to the second thing. We're moving on to the third thing. And just the more of a roadmap you can give your listeners, the easier it is for them to follow you.
There's no question, because they are on the road with you.
Mm-hmm.
And they know where they're going.
I wonder, Manfred, if you could take us, I'm sorry, am I interrupting? I was going to go on to tools, Phil.
Actually, I was going to say, you know what? I think Carol has some questions about tools. The thing is, how do we make this interesting? How do we make this fun? I think this is all great stuff. And, okay, I want one last thing on this. Manfred says, think in 3s. Athos, Porthos, and Pfeiffer. What's the last? Aramis, yes. There you go. The Three Musketeers. I just want to say that always the Three Musketeers, right?
Yes.
The thing is, I always want to say D'Artagnan, but he was the fourth Musketeer.
He was the fourth.
Yeah.
Athos,
Right.
Porthos, and Aramis.
Yeah, Athos. So there we go. Those are Three Musketeers.
Kind of the
so anyway,
Ringo, yeah. The fourth, what was the three?
Just feel glad for not saying Larry, Moe, and Curly.
Right, the fourth stooge, absolutely. All right, so we know this is getting edited. Okay.
Shemp is the fourth stooge.
Shemp, yes.
What about Curly Joe?
There you go. So anyway, I know this is a thing that Carol cares deeply about. So Carol, let's carry Manfred into some of the tools that can make this work a little bit better.
Right. Well, so Manfred, we've been talking about changing the visuals, and I am so excited to hear you talking about unsharing your screen so that you're not locking people into slides, and editing your slides so that they're not staring at 25 bullet points, which is the equivalent of 0 bullet points because they can't remember any of it, and making sure that you're getting human contact. But I would think, and you mentioned this in the pre-conversation we had about Mural and using tools to help you not only build a really interesting presentation, but are you also using those in the presentations? And can you just tell us a little bit about the things that you're bringing in that are bringing this all to life in a more vibrant way?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the tools and the platforms are evolving. And they're all evolving rapidly because there is this market need for it. So I have learned this from some other people that were early starters with it, and I found Mural a very interesting digital whiteboard because it offers a variety of little gadgets, tools on it, like sticky notes, different colors, sticky notes. And if you have ever done an ideation activity with design thinkers, they are very heavy into using sticky notes and whiteboards. And you can use the same technique because that creates also interaction, that creates collaboration, because everybody has his color or her color of sticky notes, and they can put it onto whatever subject you're working on. And you can use Mural then as well in the breakout room. So a group of 3 can work on their question and put things together and work together on a mutual platform, on a whiteboard, which you then can pull into the plenum when they explain what they did in their little session, and you can have different breakout rooms in Zoom and of course also other platforms. But I've pretty much stuck to Zoom now. Once you're used with something, you're getting a little bit better, and you do that.
So I want to bring up a point on that is to where that is. I think one of the reasons that Zoom has been super successful is because they took a lot of the friction out of creating these calls that, other services just seem more challenging to use. I mean, it is amazing to me just how challenging it can be to make a Google Meet work for a large group of people. It's just very hard, right? Whereas Zoom took all the friction out. And the reason I want to bring that up in the tools section of what we're talking about is, and I've not used Mural, but I've heard lots of good things about it. But I used another tool at a call earlier in this week, someone else's call. I was on the call. I'm not even going to name the tool because I found it infuriating. But it occurred to me in this that we've trained the audience to think these things are going to be relatively easy to use. We want to engage them emotionally for them fun. And in these tools, if we're going to use something that's a little more difficult, we got to give them time to come to it. What I thought was crazy about this is they basically there were 300 some people on this call, threw them into rooms with a tool they'd never seen before and said, here, come up with an idea on this thing. And it's like everybody spent most of the time going, what the heck is this? How do I navigate? I mean, and it was just there. So I just, we talked about wayfinding, we talked about having a roadmap, bringing people through. But I think we have to understand that on this roadmap, not everybody is in the same place. And we got to kind of bring them together so we can work together at the beginning. And there are some really nice tools for making this work. But you got to understand there's going to be some friction when you introduce a new tool in there.
So we might have to have some tool training.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's important to recognize the fact when I work with a team on a regular basis, what I would do is simply have a half an hour a mural session with them, or call it a tool session. I don't want to make advertising for something. It's just, for me, this is now a little bit the standard at this point. And let's face it, 5 months from now, there may be 3 others that have the same or better features, because that market is super dynamic and super evolving.
Right.
I would have a session on the tool so that everybody is at least reasonably acquainted how to use it. If you have a one-time group together, you may have to spend 3 minutes with the planner. So we are going to use this tool. And these are the features that you will need to use in order to do your little breakout work in smaller teams. And this is how it works. And you go a little bit through the motion. That is 2-3 minutes, and people are at least they are intuitive anyhow.
No. I think some of them are. I will say again, this tool, which will remain unnamed, Voldemort, this tool was just super challenging. And it's like, I think it was quite capable, but it was not an intuitive interface. And so it just required a lot of effort. And it was even worse as you had 300 people in it at the same time. And the tool showed you what everyone was doing all at once. I mean, it was, wow, lots of stuff going on this board, right? All at the same time. So kind of hard in that regard. So the thing is, we talk about tools to make this look beautiful, right? So you've got, you talk about murals, a thing to do, that nice collaboration, attractive.
Whiteboard, digital whiteboard.
Right. You mentioned Loom is a way to present sort of PowerPoints that were even prettier than PowerPoint. I've used Beautiful AI. I think those in Loom are very similar. And I didn't realize that when we were putting the notes together at the beginning, but I've used Beautiful AI to great effect. I like that a lot. Another one that's come to mind that I have played with and I'm using in some of our meetings is I'm creating short videos, explainer videos in something like Adobe Spark Post. I'm using that both to create some of the graphics that we use, as well as short explainer videos inside the event. Again, like you said, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, that kind of thing. Just here's where we are. This is what we're up to. Take a look at what's going on, that kind of stuff. So I think that works really well too. Now, Carol mentioned a tool that I had never heard of before as we did our pre-production meeting here. And I am completely intrigued by that. Carol, will you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, this is a client of mine who has been using Adobe, and we have finally gotten through all the connection issues that Adobe was having, which were profound. Adobe actually has some really nice tools. However, none of the platforms, and I have officially been on all of them, she says, with hope. At some point, the one that is brand new that just came up, which I believe somehow Adobe has their logo on it. So I don't know what the relationship is. I haven't had time to check it out, but it's called Hop-In. And this is the one that scales in a way that nobody else seems to be managing. And so the same client that's all over Adobe is now also exploring for a major event, 40,000 people, to bring in a conference feel. And everything I'm learning, and this is just through tutorials at this point, I have not seen it actually in action, but what I'm seeing in it is that they are now the new conference hall of the digital world. And from the outside, it looks like they're going to be doing a really good job. There's opportunities for virtual marketing. There's even opportunities to have vendors have their own booth. There is a real ease in the breakout rooms, which of course is what sets Zoom apart from everybody else. Everybody has channels or something, but nobody does it as well as Zoom until we now meet Hop-In, who may have made it even easier where people can go at will as opposed to by assignment. go in and out of breakout rooms. There's backstage for your speakers where they can sit and chat and have conversation. And then there's the stage itself, in addition to breakout rooms for breakout sessions. So if this actually implements as well as it describes, this is going to be a tool we're going to be seeing a lot of. I think that this is going to really solve some problems when you're trying to scale for town halls and any other kind of major client gatherings, whatever else it is that you might be doing at scale. So
yeah,
interesting.
I think those all just sound like important points, and it is obviously, the platforms, right? And we like Zoom, but they're just things that it hasn't done. I mean, it is so great. It's pulled us so far along, but there are things we'd like to do, like you said, at will. I'd like to be able to pull in and out of events at will. And right now, the way I do that inside of Zoom is super clunky, right? Which means I usually am quitting one session and going into another session to pull that off. That's just super clunky. And I can't. And there's no way for me to be in a room. I might be tossed in a breakout room, which is super cool, but there's no way for me to be like in a room standing around with, say, 50 people on the call saying, I'd like to talk to Scott. And I can chat with him, but I can't say, let's go off in a corner and talk for a couple of minutes and pull something out and then bring it back to the meeting, right? So I think that's really tough. I think this has been a great conversation, and I know we're kind of at the end of our time, maybe even a little bit over time, but I knew it was a big topic, and Manfred had some big ideas I wanted to make sure that we got shared. So I want to say thank you to everybody for doing this thing that we did. Let's start with our guest, Manfred Gollent. Thank you for sharing your expertise and leadership training and your experiences and kind of talking to other folks about how they work through this. Tell people, if they want to find you, how do they get more Manfred Gollent in their life? First of all, they find me on LinkedIn and on Facebook, but of course our website is QLI International, QLI-international.com, and you will find me on that. And I'm accessible. I'm around virtually and physically. The thing is, for having me. This is really cool. Yeah, I'm super glad to have you. I say, you're so tall, so big in real life, but in Zoom, we're just like this, man. It's just the 2-inch square in Zoom.
The great equalizer.
Yeah, I like this as an equalizer. All right, Scott Pfeiffer, how do people find you, friend?
Well, the best place is on LinkedIn, where I'm Scott Pfeiffer. You can also send an email to strategybusinessconsulting@gmail.com, or my website is fscottp.com.
Excellent. And my pal, Carol Hamilton, how do we find you if we want more of you in our lives?
Well, you can certainly come to LinkedIn, which is carolhamiltonlive.com, or my new bright, shiny website at hamiltonthinktank.com. Still under works, but we're having a ton of fun with it. Come on over and say hi.
Dive into the Hamilton think tank with us. Big splash. Make a splash.
Make it a splash. Yep.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you. Hey, I'm Phil Yanov, and my goal in life is to get you, my IT friends, connected and living better lives, which is why we brought Manfred and all this to you today, right? We're trying to be relentlessly useful, as my friend Scott Pfeiffer likes to say. How can we be relentlessly useful to you? And we hope that we can help you as an IT person lead better meetings, and that's why we did this today. But you can come and practice some of these skills on us if you'd like at one of our many events. Find us at techafter5.com. And if for some reason you want to chat with me about something, you can always find me at philyanov.com, philyanov.com. But thank you for being with us. Please do come hang out with us at a meeting. That's where we do our best work in connecting you with other IT professionals and the folks who can help you. See you soon.